So right after I do a video about all the athletic director hires, doing it at like, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night on Thursday, I was like, okay, well, there's nothing out there that seems like it's gonna pop, right? At least not until, another day. Well, we had heard that the Stanford one was probably coming to a close, and I think I'd read that they were trying to get something done by August. Well, they waited until, Thursday night for it to get released, and so basically there is a hire of John Donahoe, who is the former Nike, ServiceNow, which is a cloud-based company, eBay, and Bain and Company president and CEO, most recently known for Nike. And my thoughts before this was announced, and you can see the video that I also posted from earlier tonight. I really thought it could be someone from pro sports and business, but I felt like it was probably going to be Ivy League ties, if not directly tied to Stanford. And so, what did we get? We got someone that kind of checks all those boxes. And so, let's look at their choice. He is 65 years old. He is a Stanford MBA graduate, an economics undergraduate from Dartmouth, Ivy League, where he also served as a Board of Trustees member for 10 years. I thought that was pretty unique. He's actually currently on his second stint serving on the advisory board for Stanford Business School. Keep in mind, President Levin at Stanford was the dean of the business school up until his presidency for, I think, 8 years. Stanford, in the release on ESPN.com, says, quoted as a unicorn candidate because of his business experience and strong ties to Stanford. It also mentions he was heavily recruited by President Levin and former women's basketball coach Tara Vanderveer, and reportedly lives 5 miles from Stanford already. And that he also, Andrew Luck, will report to Donahue, which is different than when Luck was hired. And it was reported he'd report to the president instead of then AD. So, how'd I do on that one? Ivy League, check. Pro sports, if you count Nike, that'd be a check. Business person, several, I mean, decades of this, and then a Stanford alum. So I think this is all kind of interesting. It's one of those things is like almost like a hidden in plain sight. If you're on Stanford's campus, I wonder how many people just kind of knew this was probably going to be the hire, or if he'd want to do it at age 65. He's made millions upon millions, so it sounds like it's a passion project for just this change of how they want to do this model of college athletics at Stanford. The Stanford ties kind of came into clear focus as so important. I watched an Andrew Luck video that Stanford football had put out a few days ago on YouTube, and it was very much this It's almost like a Harvard person would think about, but Stanford is really also just the identity of knowing what it means to be a Stanford person, and so all that kind of came together. You knew they had huge business acumen, but you also knew the president seemed to be heavily involved in this. So I thought that was really interesting to see that, but I just had to jump on and do another video while it was fresh in my head because I had to kind of look into this person. And goes to say, I mean, a president that knows who they want and a board that empowers the president to go get whoever he or she would like to serve. And it seems like in the last 2 weeks, he was heavily recruited, and this job's been open for a while. Elevate helped with the search, so shout out to them. That sounds awesome. But I don't see any flaws here. It looks like he left Nike in good situation when he left. So really impressive. Now the Rutgers situation. I thought another strong hire, obviously, this week was Rutgers and hiring Keli Zinn. Watch the press conference, watch everything kind of unfold. From President Tate, he kept referring to it as an archaeological dig when talking about athletics and the athletic director position. The task requires the diplomacy of an ambassador and the operational discipline of a general. I thought that was really cool. That sounded awesome, right? Process was whenever someone asked him obviously about the process that kind of failed of trying to find this modern AD approach and athletic department approach. Simply responded and said, "Hey, the process was started before, and he did everything he could to honor the initial process and idea." Obviously, he kind of got in there and took control of the search. He had mentioned the most important thing between an AD and president is trust, and he was open to building that trust with anyone that came to become the AD. But when it became feasible to get Keli Zinn, because she already had the ideal background for the profile and they had already built that trust, I thought he was really soft spoken in his responses, but very clear about why he chose Keli Zinn. He expects Rutgers athletics to win. He said, "It's real simple to me. I don't make it complicated." Now, Keli Zinn had one of the better press conferences of ones I've watched. I mean, her energy was incredible. She was very well spoken from beginning to end. Her speech was awesome and probably should be a starting point for future ADs. She had also thanked Brad Cox, Stan Wilcox, Debbie Yao, Oliver Luck, Gordon Gee, Shane Lyons, Scott Woodward. So a lot of these West Virginia and more recently LSU mentors of such, just really cool to see. She also kind of had her own saying that the vision is simple, the process is complex. We came here to win conferences and national championships and attract the nation's elite talent. That mean, and she also focused in on that's athletes, coaches, and staff. Yeah, another note I put on here is importance of being able to elevate corporate and commercial space is critical for our success, but to also do things in a way where the traditional fundraising and supporting capital projects can also thrive. Said it's a balance. You'll see us come together on that piece, and it'll be a consistent focus to capitalize on current revenue areas while also creating new ones. The biggest piece was President Tate being here, is what she said. When he departed LSU, she mentioned how it was tough for her and for a lot of people at LSU. So the relationship they have is driven by their relentless pursuit of success and winning at the highest level. She also appreciated his ability to balance academics and athletics, and he's the best she's ever seen at doing that. Um, Appreciates letting her step into the head coach role after being an assistant coach for 25 years. I thought that was a good way to looking at it. And there was like a report out that she was like a finalist for Georgia Tech, and I didn't realize that. Um, but I thought it was cool. She got asked a question about building out her team, and said seeking elite talent and knows she has the opportunity to build an incredible team with a few positions already ready to go. Those who are optimistic can motivate and empower others, and those who have made the world of college athletics as their deepest passion. It almost kind of came off as this like we all thought Rutgers was going a different direction, and then she just kind of President Tate kind of says, "No, this is where we're going." And then I like how she mentioned those who have made college athletics their deepest passions, one of their deepest passions. And talked about they'll be aggressive about NIL and things like that. But I do think it was an awesome. There's a lot of one-liners, and the press conference was short. I mean, it was a lot more brief, I feel like, than some of the other ones, like Georgia Tech recently. The president didn't speak much. He didn't stand up there with her. They didn't sit at a table. So that was an interesting, just a different dynamic. So, in my opinion, my thoughts on the Rutgers hire, I just assume President Tate, and I wrote my thoughts before his press conference, so some of them might kind of like mesh together, but I just kind of assume President Tate took control of the search and had a conversation probably with Scott Woodward about Keli Zinn, where Scott probably knew she had been a finalist for jobs and made President Tate feel confident that she could do the job. And if she was a finalist at Georgia Tech, I wrote this before I had read that, then it makes sense, right? And Scott Woodward has this, and I'll get to him in a second, but I mean, it didn't sound like Scott Woodward was going to hold her back if she was already being clear about this. And I listened to the Rutgers Rant podcast, and it was really interesting. There's a lot of good detail in there, and one thing I did on my own too was looking at Scott Woodward's background, and uh, it mentioned like Stephanie Rimp had left Nevada, or excuse me, went to Nevada after working with Scott Woodward. So it kind of made it seem like maybe working for Scott Woodward seems like hands off, doesn't do a lot of interviews or anything. And I watched like a 40-minute video interview a few months ago of Keli Zinn, uh, that with the LSU local sports radio show. And it seemed like she just did a lot of the day to day, and that she liked that she wasn't micromanaged, and so she got a lot of experience. So That part is just interesting. Building Rutgers senior staff, there are a lot of positions to fill, and Kelly mentioned multiple times about obviously attracting the nation's elite talent. I don't think anyone she worked with at West Virginia will come with her to Rutgers, and most of them are gone that would leave, I feel like, ever since, kind of Ren Baker came in. And so, does she bring people from LSU instead? It seems like she'll probably leverage her SEC or other peer networks of deputies or senior AD, associate ADs to join her at Rutgers, or I think at this point it's safe to say we're probably going to see another FBS non-power athletic director go to Rutgers. I mean, we saw it happen several times recently, and obviously Brent Jones at Troy is going to Georgia Tech, things like that. So it'll just be kind of interesting. I had one thing I am proud of is I actually predicted her that I thought she was more likely to take the other job that I had. So I had mentioned I thought Keli Zinn, and I had never heard of Keli Zinn before I started kind of researching the Marshall job. And so I was looking for anyone with my in my database that had West Virginia ties. Well, she had worked at West Virginia. She didn't go to Marshall, but it's kind of like my third layer of like looking into the when I was doing the HEA briefing and doing a prediction for Marshall, and her name came across, and then I was like, okay, that might make sense. But then it kind of crossed my mind is, could she go to Rutgers if things went, different because of President Tate and just knowing how important that is? And I was like, well, she probably wouldn't go to Marshall because of Ryan Alpert going to Georgia Tech. Because if you're a high level number two at a school like a LSU, it kind of made me think, well, wait, you probably wouldn't go for that. You'll probably get one of these Power 4 AD jobs if they want them. I didn't think it would be that quick of a change, but whenever President Tate was going from LSU to Rutgers, and then we saw the news of, kind of the search firm situation, it kind of made sense that she could go to Rutgers. And so I thought that was an awesome one. And I also made the prediction, maybe it was Sarah Bumgarner from Texas who had been a deputy AD at Rutgers. But then I was realizing afterwards, I was like, well, you probably wouldn't. It makes sense that maybe you just want a clean slate of people that haven't been there. Um, no matter what happened, I think these are two situations where the presidents went and found who they wanted as athletic directors. And I think that was the theme of the Stanford situation. And you think about the ties of the Stanford president and this person. Stanford was committed to that. The Stanford president seemed to be committed to a very different model, and understanding the importance of business. He is a business person. He has an economic background. This new Nike CEO has an economic background, right, at Dartmouth, and clearly a business acumen that's important. Clearly ties to the Stanford Business School. The president had been at the Stanford Business School. Look at Rutgers. President Tate probably saw that Keli Zinn was doing a lot of the day-to-day stuff and the big picture stuff in the last few years, with Scott Woodward allowing her to. And so kudos to everyone involved. I think it's awesome for a board to the board didn't have to let the president come in and do this, but they hired the president and they basically tasked the president with, okay, well, you're tying Keli Zinn to you. And so that's awesome. Same thing with Stanford. Stanford president had only been in that role for about a year, but had been at the business school for almost a decade as the dean, who had been on the advisory board, the Nike CEO, former Nike CEO, and this is on his second stint. The person lives 5 miles from there. It's just went out and got him. So I think these two AD hires were awesome. I think they got who fits both of their schools, and just incredible. And it goes to this theme of why I'm studying the AD trends from the perspective of a president, because presidents are still in charge. The boards are still in charge, obviously, of finding their president, but you're talking about two boards that let their presidents go out and get who they wanted to be as the ADs, and they trusted them. And I think that's awesome. It's just a really cool perspective. And so that's why I enjoy anytime I see a president. And that's also why I harp so much that president situations seem to matter so much. A lot of these openings I just talked about in my last video. So I think another thing that will be interesting is Scott Woodward, who becomes the LSU number two. I don't think you see Stephanie Rimp leave Nevada and return as Scott's number two because she was in that role before Keli Zinn, but has so much changed in college athletics. And and in things that maybe we see, does Stephanie Rimp either go back to LSU and do it again and then go somewhere else, or does she go to Rutgers and join Keli Zinn? So that'll be interesting because we're seeing this launch pad to go from deputy to a G5 AD, and then let's go back to a P4 deputy, and then launch to be a P4 AD. Not knowing anyone's personalities or their dreams or their goals, maybe she's completely happy there. But we just saw Diana Sabo do it to go to Maryland, so who knows? And we've seen it with Brent Jones going to Troy. He had been there a lot longer. So I thought it was cool. Just to put a name out there for the number two. If he stays in house, I wouldn't be surprised if Woodward goes with his chief of staff, Dr. Andrea Tepe or Teep, steps into that number two role. The other deputies on staff either are LSU alum, not likely to ever leave, or they don't have the direct relationship with the AD to seem to step into that number two role. It seems like Woodward is okay growing this AD tree at other places, letting people leave, and then his chief of staff has been in that capacity for coming up on 5 years. And if he doesn't do that, does Keli Zinn bring Dr. Tepe with her to Rutgers? Who knows? I mean, it seems like they're ready to grow and leave. So that was interesting. Now, a final name. If LSU does go external to bring someone in as the number two, I wouldn't be surprised if Cincinnati senior deputy AD and COO John Daniel goes to LSU as the number two, at least in a senior deputy position. He's an LSU alum, and who knows? So that'll be maybe he's completely happy at Cincinnati too. But those are just some of my thoughts. The Stanford news breaking right after I put that. I was just going to do a Rutgers search in a couple of days reaction video, but threw the black sweatshirt back on. And before the weekend hits, I was like, all right, let's just do another video. But this is fun. It's fun when you break down a search after the fact. You put in a prediction at the beginning based on your own research, and then you do a reaction. And me putting this stuff on there, it's the easiest way for me to hold myself accountable to studying. Am I going to do this long term? Probably not. I want to help people while I study, so it's kind of like me studying out loud. And we will get back to the interviews once the school year starts. I have ADs that I want to have on the podcast, so please hang on with me if you don't like this type of commentary. But if you do like this and you learn, the best thing you can do is pass it on to your network. I mean, I don't make any money off of this. I spend money to do this, to edit it, and to maintain even a website. But it's fun, and hopefully it turns into something with helping a search firm or helping these schools find leaders that make sense. But going to be putting research out that people can use. But if you are an aspiring athletic director, you're a current athletic director that maybe wants to know more about this area and you want to go into maybe even be open for another role in the future. I've got something else in the works that is geared around all this, but I just kind of want to put it out there that this stuff you can break it down and things make more sense. It's not as simple as, oh, they hired that person. It's probably just who you know. Well, it is, but there's also a lot of factors about who you know and who they know and many layers to it. So it's very interesting and it's fun to do as I head into the fall, getting ready to do my qualifying exam here in a couple of weeks. So I won't be doing as many videos in August, I predict, and then school year starting. I had to put this out there, but this stuff's fun, and even these late night videos, it's entertaining for me. So I hope you're enjoying it. Subscribe, rate, and review on the podcast or the YouTube channel. I don't ask to do that a lot. I'm very happy with the LinkedIn page. I have been off Twitter and X for I think 2 years now, and that lost a lot of my following and just being able to keep up with the news. But I've been really growing that LinkedIn Higher Ed Athletics page. I put a lot of the content on there. Growing it from zero to over 100 people in about a month or two. So it's been fun. And so please just support it if you find it interesting and helpful, and pass it to your president too. Maybe they'll like it and see where they fit in this with their athletic directors. Appreciate it.